Hi guys, Cam at the Battler Workshop, and yeah, it's certainly been a battle, especially tonight. I was sort of getting to the last bits of machining up the crank arm, and it was coming together beautifully. Beautiful feeling finishes, everything bang on tolerance, looking really good. And had a major slip up at the at one of the final machining operations, and yeah, it's now going to go into the trophy case. It's a throwaway, so I've got to start this one again. But you'll see what happened at the end of the video on that last machining operation that's on this. But a lot of it comes about I'm rushing around too much. I'm rushing around an awful lot. Running late from work to get to the school pickup. My wife's working back at work, and she's got to get home to get stuck into her study. She's got a paper due at uni, so she's flat out with that. Trying to get tea organised, then doing the drop-offs to the sporting activities, and then organising the pickups, and sort of getting out for 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, watching the clock before I've got to go and pick the kids up again, and just not thinking, and bang, it's stuffed, and yeah, we're starting again. So I'll pick up on this from where I finished off, where I stuffed it. So it's been a bit of a long road on this one, I must admit. It's I don't get a long period out of my workshop. I sort of maybe get an hour at a stretch at a time, and that makes it a little bit hard to try and get projects, get the continuity happening. And I guess that's one of the reasons why this is taking so long, is that the minimal time that I do get out here. And I must admit, when I do get here, I really enjoy it, but it's not as much as I'd like, and that's family life, and that's stuff that we. And speaking of family life, I'll be back in a minute. Hang on, Danny. Oh no, where was I? I've totally forgotten. Yeah, so my time here is fairly sparse when I get in here, and I sort of go hell for leather to try and get as much done as I possibly can. So. And it's been my undoing on a couple of occasions, and this one in particular. So sit back, relax, enjoy, and have a look at what I do to myself. All right, guys, I'll catch you soon. All right, guys, we're back to do it all again. We'll see how that comes up. All right, so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to do the drilling and tapping for the Gib Adjusting Screws. So you can see them on the side here. I'm actually going to drill through with a flat bottom drill and just spig it in a couple of millimeters rather than doing it through with a drill point. So tapping size for the M8s is 7mm, and I've just ground up a flat drill just to do that little divot inside, and then we'll just reshape the ends of those little grub screws. So these blokes just here, we'll reshape those so that they fit in. I could have gone M6 there, but with the grub screws, the Allen keys are starting to get a little bit small and fiddly, so M8 with that size Allen key is quite comfortable to work with to nip them up as we're going. And as you can see, I've actually stoned back, and it's come up fairly good where we cut that slot with a slitting saw. A little bit of damage just around here where I was in there with my picking tools, picking teeth out. And what I might even do, I might even just run a tool down there with an Aris. Is that Dan? Yeah. Oh yes, family life. I'm just going to run a tool down there with a bit of an Aris just to open up 60 degrees either side, just to give that a little bit of a chamfer all the way through and try and hide some of that a little bit of damage just there. It's not too bad. I might even leave it, but I'll have to think about what I'm going to do. All right, but in the meantime, we'll get these holes drilled. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to do. In reality, it's probably going to be locked up by only 2, but I'll put 6 down there anyway. All right. So what I've done before I do start is I've actually centered off the edge and centered off that edge there, and I've got my 0 point here. So we'll work our way. just set the depth for that. I just want to come past that. Let's bring him back to 0. Alright, and that's just put a lovely little flat bottom spigot, or flat bottom hole, about 1mm down past the slot. So that's come up really nice. So yep, those little flat bottom drills, if you grind them up right, they'll do a great little job. Alright, that'll allow me at least to get, well, pretty much full thread depth through. I will just relieve, I keep throwing it away, I will just relieve the end of that grub screw. Just relieve the threads off the back of that grub screw just by a couple of threads, so that there's no way it's going to bind out. Right, well, I'll sit up and I'll sit up next and we'll get that tapped out. Alright, let's see how we go at tapping this out. Alright, last one. That's it. So these spiral taps are absolutely wonderful. I'm really converted to them. No chips getting stuck on the bottom. Jigs out beautifully. That's it. Alright, I'll just run over with a chamfering tool and just deburr those out. And we'll set up next to do the modifications to the to those grub screws. Alright. Finally finished with this Gib set. Thank goodness. It's been a bit of a saga. Alright, we got there. Alright guys, so just making up the, or just modifying these grub screws for the Gib adjusters. And I've just made up a little split collar. Once again, that was just turned down and slit with the hacksaw, which is a much safer way of slitting, believe me. So it's much as we did before with the other adjusters. And I'll just try and work around the camera a bit without knocking it too much. So I just turn the thread down for a 3 metre length down to about 6.5, face it off, and then we use a universal radiusing tool. Just use a file. Just trying to work around the camera here. out she pops. And there it is. Nicely radiused off, ready to go. Righto guys, we've got our little Gib adjusting screws in. So that's got a nice firm feel to it. Going up and down. I'd say that when I've slit that, it's sprung just a little bit. It just went in just by tapping it with the palm of your hand. But once these get nipped up, once you're on centre, or the position that you want to be for your side cut, I won't push this, but that has locked up very tight. And it doesn't take much. Now, realistically, I'm probably only going to use 2 of these at any one time. So, but no, very happy with the result. So that'll lock that nicely in place to do our slotting with the ram. All right, it's another job down. Next thing I think I'll start is the crank arm. It's going to be moving in and out of here on the crank disc, which is, I can grab it up here. So that's our crank disc. So we'll make up the crank arm and the pins, and we'll start getting that into play. So it's sort of starting to get fairly close towards the end. Alright guys, we'll pack it in for now, and I'll see you back when we start knocking this crank arm up. Okay. Alright guys, hopefully this is going to be easy enough to see. This is the next job we're going to be making up, is the crank arm. Nothing too awkward in this one at all. I've got a bit of rotary table work to do to get these ends radiused out. I've got a bit of black stock I'm going to cut up in the bandsaw, which is where every job starts from. It's a bit of 25 by 25. Actually, that's not going to work. All right, we'll have to do it out a bit of 25 by 50 flat. Yeah, wasn't thinking there, was I? All right, we're going to do it at 25 by 50 flat. We've got a machine down to 21 on one side and down to 12 on the other side. What I may do is go another ½ mil on this. As you might recall, when I machined the slides and that tool dropped out of that ER collet and my slides ended up going ½ mil deeper than I wanted, I've got an issue that the crank pin may hit the underside of that slide by now. So if I take ½ mil off this, that just gives me a little bit more breathing space where that crank pin head is going to sit. And it's not going to foul with the with that slide plate. Yeah, we'll rough it out with a milling machine first, get it to shape basically, get the holes bored, and then we'll set up in the rotary table to do the hemispherical ends on them, or spherical ends. Once again, I've got lubrication that does drop into there that feeds the bush, and we're going to have lubrication into here through the actual pin itself. So fairly straightforward. I had down there 30 by 30, but I haven't got any 30 by 30, so as I said, it'll be a bit of 25 by 50 stock. So we'll go and find some more stock that we can do that with, and we'll make a start. Alright guys, we'll see you soon. Alright, change of plans again. I found a bit of 32 square stock, which I think is the old 1¼ inch stuff. I had this stock lying around for a long time. I've made up a whole heap of T-nuts out of it, and I knew I had it somewhere, but I couldn't find it until just now. So we're going to use that for our stock to make up the crank. So it's Alright, done. Alright, I think we'll kick off on the mill first. Right, see you soon. Righto, I'm just going to take a couple of mil off all round on this, maybe 3 mil all round. The reason being, this is bright still, and as I've mentioned in one of my other videos, when it's bright, it's drawn or it's rolled cold, and that sets up stresses within this metal. And when we start machining it, those stresses then start to relieve out, and that manifests itself in this material moving or bending. So I'm going to work it all the way around all the sides, get all those stresses out so at least it's stable, and when we come down to our final machining it's not going to be moving around too much. So one of the things I don't like about bright steel is that it does move. I'd much rather use the old black crusty stuff for this sort of work, but that's all I've got on hand, and we'll go with it. Alright, I'll continue knocking this down to rough it out, and we'll come back when we're got some stock that we're going to start doing some final machining on. Just thought I'd bring you back very quickly just to show you how much this is actually bowed. So when I was running the cutter back, I've touched on that edge there and that edge there, so I haven't touched in the middle. So I've got around about a 0.15 millimeter bow on that at the moment. So it just goes to show how much this bright mild steel does actually move when you start machining that skin off and letting that stress relieve out. So, alright, as I said, we're still roughing. We'll bring you back when we're sort of at a stage where we're going to start finishing it out. Right, just by way of a demo, we'll see if this side is bowed as well. So we'll just let it scratch across there, and we'll see if that's an even cut all the way through on this last unmachined side. There you go, so you can see that that is quite bowed. Let's see how far that actually goes. That was more like 0.15, so you can still see we're not just quite cleaning up the middle there, so you can see very graphically just how much that bows when we start taking those that skin off that bright mild steel bar. Alright guys, I'll keep going. Alright, so it's been a couple of days since I roughed this out, so I've just let it sit for a couple of days, let it ease itself out. So what I'm going to do is just take off a couple of mil on each side to bring it down to just shy of 21 mil thick. The sides will bring down, we're going to come down to 26, we're at 27 at the moment, so we'll come down just shy of 26, then we'll start just roughing out the guts. Right, so as I said, I've let this sit for a couple of days just to relax out a little bit, just to find its own shape. And now I'm fairly confident that we can get that. It's reasonably stable now. We'll get this finished off to size, and we'll bring you back when we start cutting the guts out on it. Righto, roughing down the final bit. New tips, 3mm cut. What a difference. The finished length on this is 171, but I want to leave it about 0.5 of a mil up on that to tidy up when we're doing the radiuses on the rotary table. It's measuring up at about 172.2, so then about 0.7 left to go. So I'll show that. 71.54. Yep, it'll do nicely. Alright, what I'll do now is we'll start setting up to start roughing the guts of this out on top and also in on the sides as well. So we'll get set up and we'll get started on that. See how this looks with the camera. Okay, so what we're going to be doing now is we're just going to be roughing out the thickness of that web. So I've got roughly 5mm off each side, and I've just marked a bit of a witness line that I'm going to come do for roughing out. And then once we've got that roughed out, we'll set it up and then we'll start reducing that web thickness down and reduce the other boss down as well. So we'll get this whole thing basically roughed out. Once we're roughed out and we're fairly comfortable, then I'll set up and we'll do the bores, and they become the datum points for everything else that we do on this job. But we'll just spend the time, we'll get it all roughed down, roughed to shape, and then we'll go on with the bore sets. Righto, that's the dog bone shape roughed out. What we'll do now is we'll flip it up on the end and we'll bring it down to the 21mm and the little step down as well. And we're going to start looking at setting up the boring. Righto, that's all the roughing out done. So, as I said, next we'll get ready. We'll whip some boards through there. I may even just set it up on that face there. Just give that a little bit of a lick just to make sure that it's going to stay nice and square for us. In fact, I can see a bit of a bow on that at the moment. I've left plenty of meat on that, so. But material we can take off that just to get it all squared up. And that's the problem with this steel, the bright mild steel stuff. It's yeah, not as stable as the black stuff. It tends to move around a fair bit. Right, okay, so I've just flipped it over onto its back here at the moment. We've machined that dog bone right down, fairly thin. Before we go and do any machining on that, I just want to make sure that we've got this nice and flat. And I suspect this is bowed a little bit. So I'll just have a look at it. So it's just touching there. Yeah. And it's just touching there, so either end of this camera around. Just touching up here, just touching down here, so that back is bowed. So I want to take that out now before we go any further. I'll take the absolute minimum off. So that was 0.1 and that was a fair way off touching there. So I'll have to go a bit more. Try 0.15. Right, that's just managed to clean up in the middle there. And you can see why it's important to keep flipping the material around to keep working out those stresses and that subsequent movement that we're getting in that material. So that's reasonably flat all over now, both sides. So I'll flip it back now and we'll take the step out over that and we'll get set up for the boring. Righto guys, we'll get on with the next operation. What I'm going to do is get these surfaces here machined off to height. So this one's going to be 21. This one, as I said, I'm going to make 11.5, not 12, because of that 0.5 millimeter difference we had in the slide, which is making that slide plate sit in a little bit deeper, just to give us a little bit more clearance. Now we've just got to machine that step out as well. So I've got it set up in the mill. We'll get those operations done and basically we're going to get it back to size. So I think this is Righto, so I've had to do another setup again. I've had to pack this up a little bit higher. I was just touching a cutter. I still had another mill to go. I was just touching the top of the jaw. Something I hate having to do is to reset up again because I've run out of clearance. But anyway, we're done again. Let's get into it. Got about 1.28 left to go on this one. That's that done. Alright, last one we'll bring back to height will be that one there. Righto, done. What I'm going to do now is we'll set up to do our boring. I've now got that pretty parallel underneath there. So we'll bore our 2 holes and use those as our datums to then start setting up to do the final finishing, everything off to widths, getting our radiuses cut, our diameters cut, and we'll do those in the rotary table and we'll get things finished out. Alright, well, I'll break this setup. We'll get the ER32s in with some drills and we'll start opening those up and then we'll do the final bores to suit. Alright, see you in a tick guys. Right guys, we're going to get set up to do the 2 bores in here. Both bores are 17mm, so what I've done is I've used my edge finder, split the difference, come in half, and I'm going to come back 72.5, so we keep an even distance from the edges here. I've allowed about 0.3, 0.35 to clean up when we're cutting those radiuses. So we'll center these off first, put a pilot hole through, and then we'll open up to maybe 5/8, and we'll set up the borer. And we'll bore these out to size. Better get out of that gear. It's better. Alright, that's something I realised I hadn't done. Just to come off the edge and come across to get it centered. Well, it doesn't look too bad actually, but yeah, we better get that right. Alright, I'll come back when I've got that in center. Sunday morning, bit of a brain fade. Righto, take 2. I've put a bigger center in here because I think I'm going to have to need it to take that out because it's probably just a little bit off center. I want to take that right out so that we get a true hole to put a pilot through. That's the biggest centre I've got. Yeah, it's cleaned it out. Alright. Go up and set up our pilot drill. We'll go through that and then we'll open it up to 5/8 and set up the boring. Righto, let's open him up. So this is a 12mm drill I've got here. And what I've also done is I've set that down on my parallel, just tap that down lightly so I could just feel the parallel grabbing. And I've pushed the parallel out so I've got nothing underneath here so I can go through with my drills and my boring bars. Alright, just a little tip, this is a 12mm drill. I've just ground that up, and I always split point my drills to take a little bit of the load off the downward pressure. Also allows the coolant to get in there a little bit easier as well, but just makes it so much easier to drill if you can if you split point them out. Alright, we'll swap this over for a 580 and we'll come back. Right, I'm keeping this in the ER32 collets to drill these through. I do have, it's a fairly cheap one, but one of these chucks that you do up with hand pressure, and I find that if these drills grab when you're in here, you've got to get out with a pair of Stilsons and try and unlock that. And I have had it, as you might have noticed in one of my other videos there, where I actually stuffed it up totally. The jaws were absolutely, it was a throwaway. So Jacob's trucks are fine. You can do them up with a key. These ones here, they tend to tighten up even tighter and you just can't get them out. So I do them with the ER32 collets. It's a lot more comfortable. Righto, done. We'll set that up with the boring head now, and we'll take them out to. Righto, we've got our boring head in now. What I like to do is to zero it out, just for a clean up, and then measure it, and then I can come from my zero and know exactly how far I've got to come out, rather than trying to add and subtract odd percentages. I'm just feeding this through by hand. Take that off and give it a measure. It's the great thing about having the DRO, you can take it off, measure and come back into exactly where you were. It's a really nice finish in there. So I'm just using the bore gauges for this. I'll call it 16.41. So 0.295 off the radius. So what we'll do, point 1, point 2. Okay, that's 16.7. 16.7. Just touching there, bang on 17. Right, we'll set up on the next one. Right. Oh, about 0.05 over. That's pretty close. All right. Let's leave it at that. Right, we're going to set up in the rotary table now to start doing our radiuses. So I'll put the pallet back up on that and we'll get that clamped into place. All right, guys. Well, this probably has disaster written all over it, but we're going to take every precaution, and for once the camera is actually going to be in my favour because it's actually acting as a barrier, so I'm not going to go any further than this. This is going to be spinning around at a fair old rate of knots. I've got this set up into a spigot. Actually, I'll take it out and I'll show you. And we're going to start machining. So I've got a centre button here that I've made up. He's going to fit up inside there, so we've kept it concentric all the way through. If I can get the button in there, dear. Bit of a start, there we go. And we're just going to do this as a friction drive. Now, I've done a lot of machining like this in the past, but never with an overhung load like this. Now, I've also got to be careful in that I'm getting up very, very close to the saddle, so I've got to make sure that when I'm at my finish point, I'm not going to hit the saddle and I'm clear there, but only just. Right, let's look at the drawing and see why we're doing this. So on the drawing we have a raised boss here and we have a raised boss here. So I'm going to turn this raised boss section on both sides. So I'll have that raised boss machined down to the actual arm part of the crank. And what that will do will give me a witness to then use the end mill to come along and a point or a witness point that I can finish that end mill at. So when we set up to do the half round in the rotary table, I know that when I bring it around with my cutter it's going to meet that perfectly, because we've already milled that up to that boss that we've pre-machined as a witness point. But we've got to get past this stage first, so this little button I've made is about 1/2 mil smaller, so I can get my micrometer over it. What I'm going to do is set up a rough 0 point that I know that I'm going to come to, and set that z-axis to 0 on my digi readout. Now, I haven't actually started doing any machining with this yet, so this will be the first time. As I said, we're just going to friction drive. If it's not grabbing, what I'll do is I'll put some super glue onto that face there and we'll see how that goes. Alright, well, let's give it a go, eh? If we put it into gear might help. And this isn't a working diameter. 26mm is the nominal. So let's see where we're at with that. So we're at 27.16. It's got 1.16 to go. .005. Righto, that looks absolutely magnificent. Really happy with that. That's cleaned up beautifully all over, as you can see. What I can then do is I can then set up in my sanding disc, on my disc sander, and just radius those off and take off as much meat as I can prior to setting up in the rotary table to do the final cleanup for that section there. Alright, we'll swap this over and we'll do the other end. It's only a short boss, that one. Righto, so everything's very, very close here. We're only just going to miss the extensions on that saddle, just down there. Got friction drive on. We'll be using the same numbers that we did with the previous one. They just worked out quite nicely with the 0 up against that face there, and that's just come up absolutely beautifully. So that transition. All right, let's do this last one. Oh, you're joking. Oh no. I've moved the saddle back to clear and I haven't re-zeroed it again. So I moved the top slide back to clear and I haven't re-zeroed it again. And look what I've done. I've really stuffed it, haven't I? It was going along beautifully. One stupid mistake, moving the saddle back, forgetting to re-zero it, and look what I've done, guys. Well, there's no coming back from that other than I'm going to have to redo it. Dear me. Well, that's another one for the bin. All that work up the spout. Just when you think you got on top of it and you just have that little brain fade and you don't think, and look at what happens. My own silly fault. Alright, let's get it out. I'll stick that one in the trophy case, I think. Look at that, that was an absolutely beautiful finish. And we just stuck a sawtooth in it. Guys, check, check, check and recheck. Alright, well, let's start again.